Well, guys, it looks like we have an e-learning day today, so I would like to try and go through a few of the things that we went through in class here in this video. It'll be a lot faster. You can rewatch it, learn some things, use your time wisely. What I wanted to look at first was the list of things that we've been going through so far as we learn about the American Revolution. You can see in class that on day one, we started to learn why people were getting angry at each other. That's mostly things like the French and Indian War, and also taxation without representation. People were getting ticked, and now in day two of our unit, we're learning about what they were doing about their anger. And that kicks us into the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Massacre was a pretty interesting part of history. And if you look at the picture that I've included, you can see what the Boston and the colony newspapers showed the colonists. You can see huge clouds of smoke from all the gunfire, all the British soldiers lined up to put down the mob that gathered into the street to show them how angry they were. And if you look over at the mob, there's dead bodies on the floor. There's blood squirting out of people as they're being carried away. People are panicking and running. You'll also notice none of the colonists are armed. Only the British soldiers are armed, and even their captain looks like he's cheering them on. If you look at the British faces, some of them even look like they're smiling. This was called the Boston Massacre. When we think about the word massacre, we think totally unfair, huge amount of blood. If it was a basketball game, it would be a score of something like 100-3. It was just a massacre out there. The thing is, the actual Boston Massacre was not quite like the picture you're looking at. 5 people died, which 5 is more than 0, but I wouldn't qualify 5 as a massacre. The picture shows complete unevenness. In real life, the colonists, they kind of started it. They gathered together, they were angry, they were throwing snowballs. Oh, the horror, snowballs. Probably some of them threw rocks, maybe some icicles, but for the most part, they weren't actually trying to massacre anyone. It was the British soldiers that actually started shooting. And that's the picture that was given to the colonists. Why would the newspapers call it a massacre? Why would they put this picture in there? It was to make the colonists angry on purpose. The newspapers were reporting the news that would start to rile up the feelings in the colonists. It wasn't because they wanted a brand new country. It was because they wanted England to listen to them. And this was a way to show England that they were upset. They were upset about the taxes. They were upset about the way they were being treated. They were mad about the soldiers forcing their way into their homes. The colonists were ticked off, and it was time to show it. But the British soldiers are the ones that started shooting. 0 British soldiers died on the day of the Boston Massacre. The newspapers reported it because they wanted people to get angry. Your job, if you look over at the next part on our to-do list, it says British Boston Massacre. I would like you to recreate this newspaper clip, this headline. Don't call it the Boston Massacre. Create your new name. What would the British call it? Definitely wouldn't be a massacre. Draw a new picture. Yes, the British soldiers shot the colonists, but I don't think they'd be happy about it, and it wouldn't look so uneven. Create a new picture of what the British would say, and then under that, I'd like you to write at least one sentence to describe your picture. You can do this on Notability and turn that in. You can do it on Educreations. Take a screenshot and turn in that picture. Whatever works best for you, turn that in. The other bit of today's lesson is to talk a little bit about the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party was, when the colonists heard about the Boston Massacre, they were definitely ticked off, and they wanted another chance to show England that they were tired of being treated like this. They were tired of the soldiers. They were tired of the unfair taxes. So, in the middle of the night, a bunch of colonists dressed up like Native Americans snuck onto a British cargo ship full of things fresh back from England being counted and ready to collect their taxes, and they threw all of those into the harbor, spoiling all of the tea. Now, the King of England couldn't collect taxes on it because it wasn't going to sell. He didn't get his money. It was a simple temper tantrum that showed England that the colonists meant business, but also that they needed to be listened to. If you were the King of England and colonists had just thrown a small riot in the streets that caused shooting, and now they were behaving like this, throwing things into the water, how would you react? Do you think you'd listen politely, or do you think you would come down on them with a firmer hand? Based on what we know of King George at this point, he doesn't seem like the listening type. Things are only going to get worse from here, and in our third lesson, which we'll have next time we meet in class, you'll start to see what I'm talking about. After you've completed your British Boston Massacre picture, turn that in, and if you like, you can actually watch the video that I've posted here too. It's a TV show called Liberty Kids. You can check that out, and it creates kind of a simple cartoony version of what was going on here. And I think that's it for class. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Let me know what's going on in your lives, and I will catch you next time. Peace.